Welcome to another fun-filled edition of Second City Sports Zoom Style.
Zoom Style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Sidney Brown. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
And you can follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can go to our website, weareregalradio.com. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com for more information about this podcast, articles, and other fun stuff. You can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, along with the other podcast programming from War Media by simply going to War on Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and the iHeartRadio app. Just type in that search engine box, War on Anchor. That's WARR on Anchor. And you can also find us on YouTube at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media. You can not only listen to us, but watch us do our thing live.
Hello. And yeah, like, share, subscribe. Thank you. You're a beautiful audience. Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Yes. And let's tell everybody about this, just in case you've been sleeping under a rock. Championship Sunday in the National Football League will feature the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2 weeks down there in Tampa Bay for Super Bowl 55. Let's review the national. Good grief, this is not college football. Let's review the National Football Conference title game, which is the NFC for you kids out there. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers survived the quote-unquote frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, defeating the Packers 31-26. Aaron Rodgers had a big game for the Packers, 33 of 48 for 346 yards and 3 touchdowns. Leonard Fournette had some meaningful yards and some meaningful catches for the Buccaneers. He had 55 yards rushing, including the longest touchdown run for the Buccaneers with 14 yards in that first quarter. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling showed up for the Packers receiving-wise, 4 catches, 115 yards, and a score. Lakeena, let's get your quick thoughts on this contest before we start breaking it down. For me, Tampa Bay did what they need to do in setting the tone early, but Green Bay tried to catch up, almost did, but they just didn't have enough juice, and we'll get into why in just a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you got to commend Tampa. I mean, they kind of stuck to the game plan that kind of, helped them and beat them in their first meeting, early on in October. So I'm a little surprised that, the Green Bay didn't really adjust to that. They disguised Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
The defense did what they needed to do. Shaq Barrett had his best game this season. Sean Murphy-Bunting had, kind of was sort of the unsung hero of that defense. JPP made some big plays too for that defense. So they kind of slowed down Aaron Rodgers. And look, you got to commend also Tom Brady. I know some of us have our opinions about him, and we won't get into that. But look, he did what he needed to do. I mean, look, he threw 3 interceptions, but he made the big plays when they counted. And Leonard Fournette, rushed for the big yards when they counted. So that's one of the reasons why that Tampa Bay is going back to the Super Bowl for the first time since they won it in 2002. They'll be the first team to ever host a Super Bowl, which is crazy in this rich history of the NFL. There has not been one team. I know some people said San Francisco did it, but they weren't playing that particular stadium at the time when that Super Bowl was played. They were playing over at Candlestick Park, so that that's why it didn't count as a home game for San Fran. But Tampa, I mean, will it be kind of like a home field? We'll get to all that next week when we delve more into the Super Bowl. But look, you gotta commend Tampa. I mean, look, they made the plays both offensively and defensively, and also even special teams too when they need it.
Yeah, give the credit to Murphy, the kick returner for the Buccaneers. He had a couple of huge returns as to set up the scores for the Buccaneers. Also, let's give credit to Buccaneers offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich as well. The Buccaneers scored 21 first half points, including that last touchdown pass from Brady in that first half to Scotty Miller. Joe Buck got excited on that call for Fox, but after they converted on the 4th and 3 play, a couple of plays before with Leonard Fournette, he had a couple of drops too early in that first quarter. Don't pass him the ball again. But Tampa Bay had a perfect game plan to offset that Packers defense, and Tampa were using a lot of screens as well. Mike Evans had a good game. Chris Godwin had a couple of key catches there as well. He had a few drops as well. That's been his problem throughout the playoffs. They all had to shore that up against Kansas City in less than 2 weeks. But going back to that first half, they had the perfect game plan. And we said this on our last episode, the Tampa Bay would have to run the ball effectively, and they did enough just to get by. But that first half game plan, that was just drawn out it was executed to perfection. And the way they ended the first half, I thought that was one of the key turning points of Tampa Bay hanging on to a win there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, that defense sacked Aaron Rodgers 5 times, so that I think that JPP had 2 of those 5 sacks. And Shaq Barrett, like I said, had his best game of the season, having 3 sacks too, in addition to making the big plays. So they actually were able to slow down that offense, of Aaron Rodgers and that offense for Green Bay. But there were some key drops in some of those with some of the wide receivers too. Lazard had a very key drop. Devontae Adams had an uncharacteristic drop that would have kind of sort of tied that game for Green Bay. So that who knows what would have happened if he had caught that touchdown. But there's so many plays of the game, if you will. I think we'll delve into a couple more, right? We'll delve into the others in a little bit. But what do you think? What were sort of the key plays for you?
Just overall, Green Bay's lack of running the football, even before Aaron Jones was knocked out of that game, they weren't really effective. I know that the game plan for the Packers offense this year compared to last year was let Aaron Rodgers do his thing. Obviously, that was the game plan on Sunday, but it just seemed to me that the Packers did not have any balance offensively. And just taking a look at some of the numbers, I thought that the tight ends would be used a little bit more for both teams. I'll start with the Packers. Robert Tonyan only had 4 catches for 22 yards. He did get a touchdown in that second half, but he wasn't used effectively. Mercedes Lewis, I didn't think that he was still alive in terms of an NFL career, but he had 3 catches for 28 yards. But you could tell by those numbers that I just read off to you, a lack of running game. Those numbers would have been bigger if Green Bay would have found a way to run the ball effectively. But you have to give defensive coordinator for the Buccaneers, Todd Bowles, a whole lot of credit, especially down up that pressure to sack Aaron Rodgers, even when the Packers were making a comeback in the second half.
Well, and also to not be able to make those turnovers into points. I mean, they did one, but they weren't able to make even more points, and it should have turned maybe a couple of those field goals into touchdowns. But I mean, look, Bruce Arians, you got to give him credit. He called a balanced game. He had Todd Bowles, also Brian Leftwich as the coordinators. So they kind of, sort of confused Rodgers, if you will, with some of the, they disguised some of the defensive packages. So I think that sort of, I think that kind of shocked Aaron Rodgers too. I mean, usually the old line for the Packers usually were able to protect Aaron Rodgers and keep him afloat. Ask the Bears, but they were, to their credit, to the Bulls' credit, he was able to confuse them by disguising those packages for Aaron Rodgers, and like I said, they ended up sacking him 5 times. So clearly, it worked.
You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. As we reviewed the NFC Championship game with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers prevailing over the Green Bay Packers 31-26 to advance to Super Bowl 55. Lakeena, let's go back to the Packers offensively. As I mentioned before, they made the tremendous comeback in that second half. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, as I mentioned at the top of the show, he had a touchdown catch off of 4 receptions for 115 yards. Devontae Adams, who was shut down in that first half, actually came alive in that second half. 9 catches for 67 yards. And he had a score late, but he had a key drop during the late stages of that game as well. I thought up until that point that the Buccaneers did a tremendous job of taking him out of the game.
Oh, yeah, he was pretty much a non-factor. I mean,
exactly.
Like we would say, he had some very uncharacteristic drops. I mean, they were kind of moved him around with some of the corners and the safeties. They lost one of their safeties early on. Early in right before the second half, Whitehead. So that really kind of, you thought that maybe that was it, that, that Aaron Rodgers was able to kind of, take advantage of that, but he didn't. And look, next guy up. So a couple of the other guys that came in, they made some key plays when they needed to.
Yeah, you have to give them credit for that, and that's why Tampa Bay is moving on. And speaking of Tampa Bay, let's shift over to their receiving statistics. Chris Godwin, as we mentioned before, 5 catches for 110 yards, and he had a couple of key drops. Mike Evans, he had a touchdown to open the game. He had only 2 catches afterwards, but he had a total of 3 for 51 yards. Scotty Miller, he had that big touchdown catch that ended the first half on a high note for the road team, 2 catches for 36 yards in the score. This, I thought, was the key play of the game, Lakeena, on that third down play late in the fourth quarter. Rob Gronkowski, who's basically being used as a block tight end all season, he had the 1 catch for 29 yards on the screen and catch and run. I thought that was huge that led Tampa Bay to that field goal, which at the time had them at an 8-point advantage.
Oh yeah, that was huge. I think. Look, we haven't heard Gronk much all game, but like you said, when you forget that he's there, but when he is there and Brady throws it to him, he makes a big impact. And that particular play, I think, sort of set up that field goal that kind of not necessarily put the game away, but made it harder for Green Bay to come back. But also too, I mean, Godwin made some key catches, like you said. I mean, Scotty Miller, who's a local kid who who's from suburban Chicago, actually was able to make that big catch. I mean, he did it before when the Bucs played at Oakland. That was a key play too. So it wasn't as if this is the first time he's done this the whole season. He's done this a couple of times prior. So let's give him a little bit of credit there. But I mean, it's definitely, I think, like surprised some people that Tampa Bay was able to kind of have their way with the Packers in a lot of ways. Like we talked about earlier with the packages and the offense and stuff like that. Braves spreading the ball around, and it's insane to think that now he has as many NFC titles as Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. I mean, go figure. It's totally it's absurd at this point, Sid. I mean, it's insane. I mean, there's no, however you feel about him. I mean, you gotta look. He has the numbers, and he'll definitely be a first ballot Hall of Famer when he does retire. It's just, you just got to give him his props.
Yeah, that sounds to me like some LeBron James hate. Your talent's so great you can't catch up. You just judge that he's not on your team. But I'll let that go. That's all I have to say about that. Shout out to also a longtime Buccaneer tight end Cameron Brady. He had a touchdown in that first half as well. He had 3 catches for 19 yards. Now, that Packers defense, I thought, Lakeena, they were going to step up and play a big role. They had 4 quarterback hits on Tom Brady, but only registered 1 sack. If you're a Packers fan, what happened?
It's crazy, right? I mean, Alex, look, Adrian Amos, who actually has found himself sort of a career rebirth, since he got to Green Bay. He's been very productive. Jair Alexander had 2 interceptions. Zadarius Smith had some good hits. I mean, the Kevin King thing aside, I know people will make fun of that. The fact that he was fooled by Scotty Miller, and he was he probably didn't realize how fast he was. That's we won't go there, but that's on the prep of the DC over at Green Bay. I mean, Zadarius Smith, where were you? Rashawn Gary, I should say. Where were you? Where were some of those guys? I mean, where was the pass rush? I mean, that's on the, this isn't, remember Don Capers isn't there anymore. So you have to wonder, like, I'm sure he would have made sure that there was a pass rush there, but it doesn't seem like there was a pass rush. I mean, like you said, there was only 1 sack. So you wonder, like, okay, can we get a pass rush here? Can we get some more zone blitzes? I mean, what's going on here, kids? I mean, Brady kind of had all the time in the world. He could have went and got him some lunch over in Madison. I mean, it's insane.
Well, give the Packers secondary credit for this. They did pick off Brady 3 times, including Alexander, who picked him off twice. But Jair Alexander, who picked him off twice. But like you said, again, the lack of pressure on Tom Brady, and we said this on our last episode, that was going to be key for the Packers to win. And that didn't happen. But on the flip side for Tampa Bay, their defense, 5 sacks on Rodgers, 8 quarterback hits. You could tell that Rodgers, we said this on our last episode on Friday, Aaron Rodgers really doesn't want to run, but he can avoid the rush if he has to because of his age. Tampa Bay didn't really let him do what he wanted to do in that pocket. He didn't escape as much as he normally does. So we had to give the Buccaneers defense credit for that. They brought the pressure. It wasn't like the first meeting in October, but they did enough to win, and you just got to tip your hat off to them.
Yeah, just a great all-around game played by Bruce Arians and that coaching staff. I mean, you got to give him props, and I'm happy for him too because it's his first time going as a head coach. Everything he went through, being a cancer survivor, and also the fact that he wanted Tom Brady there, and they were able to make that happen. And despite the fact that Brady didn't really have too much time with his wide receivers during the offseason because of COVID. The fact that the fact that he's kind of been able to sort of spread the ball around and get his guys to kind of get them together. You got to commend the team, and they're totally deserving of hosting for the first time Super Bowl 55.
It should be fun down there in Tampa. We'll get into that more as we get closer to the game. You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown. We are reviewing Championship Sunday from the National Football League as we now transition over to the American Football Conference, the AFC.
Wait, hold on 1 second. Did you because I've been hearing about this all morning. Did you agree with the call on that the Packers should went for it on 4th and goal?
Oh, thank you for stopping me, Lakeena. Yes, that's what I wanted to get to before we move on. Thank you. You're Tom Brady calling an audible there, but we trust you. I thought watching that, thank you very much. I thought that it was 4th down territory after the Buccaneers went up 31-23. And watching that Green Bay drive, I said, this is definitely – it was getting late. I said, this is definitely 4th down territory. It has to be 4th down territory, correct? It turns out there wasn't. That was a bad decision by Matt LaFleur. That decision is going to haunt him for a long time. I'm not saying the Packers would have won the game, but I know they missed a 2-point conversion earlier in the game, but you still had to go for the win there. I know you want to be safe and take the points, but it turns out it really didn't help them. It really didn't. So that was the bad decision right there. Aaron Rodgers, even though he was sacked and being pressured, he still had the yards. You still had some momentum, but that was just a bad decision.
See, I'm the opposite. I think that the play prior to that, where I think Aaron Rodgers should have ran for it, because there was green there. If you guys saw it, at that 3rd down, there was green there. There was green on the other side. And we know, he is a little bit older now, but we've seen him, get the juices going. So even if he had gotten, tackled short at the 1 or 2 yard line, then the 4th and goal would have been more feasible to do. Now, for me, if it was 130 or 125, then I say, go for it. But look, take the points and just hope and pray that your defense. Look, the defense actually stopped them, so I don't know what more could they have done. But look, you take the points and you take your chances, and because let me tell you, if they did win for it and they missed it, everyone's gonna be saying that, well, they should have taken the points. So some of y'all can miss me with some of these analytics and stuff like that. So that's my feeling about it. And look, people are going to be talking about, I'm sure they're going to be talking about up in Green Bay for ever, whatever happens.
Now let's transition over to the AFC title game. The Buffalo Bills came in as underdogs. They leave as losers, but we don't call them losers on this show. They had a great season. They had a great start to the game, but ultimately they came up short as they lose to the Kansas City Chiefs by the score of 38-24. Patrick Mahomes, coming from that quote-unquote concussion from last week against the Browns, he was 29-38 for 325 yards and 3 touchdown passes. Darrell Williams had 13 carries for 52 yards and a late touchdown score. For Kansas City receiving wise, we talked about this in our last episode, Lakeena. Who you were going to stop, Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce? The Bills defense could not stop either. Tyreek Hill had 9 catches for 172 yards. Travis Kelce had 13 catches for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. Lakeena, Buffalo had the fight in them, but they just didn't have enough to get over that hump. Kansas City, they're like the Golden State Warriors. The regular season, You just do enough to survive and stay healthy. But when it comes to the playoffs, they turn it on, and they did that on Sunday.
Yeah, when the Bills sort of got to that early 9-0 lead, you thought, what's going on here? Oh, is something special about to happen here? But I think that Chiefs sort of woke up and said, okay, you know what, we're gonna get a fight from these guys, so let's kick it into gear, and they did just that. And we said this, in the last couple of weeks, that Bills pass rush,
or lack thereof.
Yeah, that came back to bite them in the butt, and Mahomes was able to take advantage of that. 325 yards. I mean, they couldn't contain Kelsey or Hill, so that was a big assignment. They, like you said, they couldn't do either. So Kelsey got 2 touchdowns, and it's just that the lack of experience in that pass rush and the lack of experience from that secondary, I think, came back to bite Buffalo in the butt. And the Chiefs is now sort of like well ahead of them. And so that hopefully they'll be back. There's no guarantees, but hopefully they'll be back hungrier next year. They're all still very young for the most part. And as for the Chiefs, I mean, they're showing you why they're the class of the AFC or the NFL in general right now. So the defense, Tyrann Mathieu did his thing. Rashard Breeland, Anthony Hitchens led the team in sacks. So that. Attack, I should say, so that they sacked Josh Allen 4 times for 53 yards. Just totally threw his mojo off, and that we said that would be the key. Which defense would step up, and turns out the Chiefs defense did just that.
Yeah, going back to Buffalo's defense for just a moment, they only had 1 quarterback sack and 3 quarterback hits, as we mentioned on our last episode. Patrick Mahomes was still dealing with that toe injury, even though he couldn't run as he normally would when he's healthy. He can still throw on the run. You saw that on Sunday. He didn't have to really run at all in terms of escaping the pocket. He was throwing on the run to Mecole Hardman, who lost that punt return from him, which turned out the Bills scored their touchdown early in the game. Mecole Hardman was involved. Travis Kelce especially was involved in the middle of the field. And we questioned the Bills linebacking core on Friday. What were they going to do against Kelce? They couldn't do anything. So Patrick Mahomes really didn't have to, quote unquote, save the day, but he did enough just for his team to win. Like you said, that Buffalo Bills defense, it had to come into this game with a bunch of question marks already. They still leave with some question marks, obviously, but hopefully, it got chippy toward the end of that game with those penalties and Josh Allen tossing the ball against, I forgot who the player's name was against for the Chiefs. But I'm glad that Buffalo, they really didn't do anything too stupid. A couple of offensive linemen who got penalized took up for their quarterback. You love to see the chippiness, but you don't want it to cross that line. You know what I mean? Football's a physical game, and you playing in between the lines, but you don't want it to go overboard. And I'm glad it really didn't go overboard yesterday. From what I understand, those 2 teams play again in Arrowhead next year, so we'll be looking out for that. But Sean McDermott, the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, hopefully, like you said, Lakeena, they'll be back. They have the makings of a great team. They had a very good season. There's only one team we all know that has a great season, is the team that wins the title. So Buffalo still has some work to do, but they're a team on the rise.
Yeah, absolutely. They're definitely going to have to, punch up that pass rush a little bit, because I think that showed that, maybe not exactly definitely it was definitely a weakness for them all year, and the Chiefs, to their credit, they were able to kind of expose that. So that's something they're going to have to look up to next year. Also, Diggs was sort of I don't want to say he was he kind of was a non-factor. Beasley was a non-factor. A lot of their top, receivers were non-factors. So you got to give, guys like Tyrann Mathieu and guys like that in the secondary to, give them credit for sort of keeping them at bay. And like you said, those sacks with Josh Allen. I mean, he was angry. If you saw his post game presser, he was angry. So hopefully he can keep that anger and energy, and hopefully the team can build on that. But look, I mean, it's right there for them, and I'm hoping that we come back. That is a fun team to watch, the Bills, and I hope they do. I hope they do come back. But the Chiefs are just a class. Like I said, they're just a class of the AFC right now.
They are, and for the Buffaloes, as we talked about on our last episode, if you remember, Lakeena, I said this: if Josh Allen has more rushing yards than Devin Singletary, they were going to lose, and that's exactly what happened. Josh Allen had 7 carries for 88 yards. Devin Singletary had 6 carries for 17 yards. T.J. Yeldon had 3 carries for 15 yards. Buffalo just could, even though they had 129 yards rushing total as a team, still wasn't enough to get it done. And also for the Chiefs, give credit to defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, who's been on championship teams before with the Giants back in the day. He was also with the old St. Louis Rams. So he knows what to do. When you have talent like that, what the Kansas City Chiefs had, you could dial up that pressure. And they really brought it in that second half, and that's why you saw the tide started to turn for the Chiefs' defense, especially toward the end of that third quarter into the fourth quarter when they picked off Josh Allen. The pressure was getting to Josh Allen. He was really confused.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. Fenton had that interception for the Chiefs. Also, Frank Clark had a couple of sacks. So he played in those Seattle teams, so he knows what it takes to win championships too. So I mean, I think that's just a great pedigree there in KC right now. And they have a mix of perhaps maybe being the new New England Patriots, if you will, or the Golden State Warriors, if you want to use that as an example. But yeah, I think look, Buffalo, like you said, maybe invest in a running back, maybe. So if that's not good if your quarterback's leading you and rushing, that's not a good thing. So maybe if you don't trust Singletary, perhaps bring in a veteran, running back. There's always a couple out there. So maybe that's something they could look up to during the off season. As for the Chiefs, I mean, we're gonna be seeing these GOAT versus baby GOAT, Brady versus Mahomes. We're gonna be seeing those memes all like these next 2 weeks. So I'm just warning you guys right now. Just saying.
Oh boy, yeah. Like I said, we'll talk about it, but here's the thing that I'm gonna bring this up early, Lakeena. I know it's going to be brought up again, but I'm gonna lay the track words at least for this show anyway. Since we all know that Super Bowl 55 will be a home game for Tampa Bay, they don't have to worry about traveling. Bruce Arians said in his post-game presser on Sunday. You can sleep in your own bed. You can have a normal routine, and you don't have to worry about any extra distractions. If you're the Kansas City Chiefs, yes, you've been here before, but it's some stuff you don't have to worry about. And I'm going to lay the groundwork for this. Because of what we're going through right now, even though things slowly starting to get back to normal, but we're still a long ways away. During a normal year, you'll have celebrities flying down, having their parties, and there's the radio row from all these national sports networks and these local sports talk show networks throughout the country. They'll be down there. I don't think any of them will be down there. If they are, they're going to be very few. But you're not going to have everybody and their mama flying into the Super Bowl. I know we didn't mention this in our last episode, Lakeena, but props to the NFL for giving out free 7,500 tickets to the Tampa Bay local area essential workers. They'll attend the game for free, which I think that's a thumbs up for the NFL. But the rest of the tickets, which I think is 14 to 15,000, will be available to the public. So, of course, Tampa Bay is going to be represented nicely. You're going to see a handful of Kansas City Chiefs fans as well. The thing that no one really talks about is a player request for tickets. You're not going to see many family members down there, the extended family, I should say. Your auntie's friends, your hangers-on, your agents. You're not going to see them all down there because it's going to be between 20 and 25% full. Now, could the NFL release a few more tickets? Sure, but still, they're going to keep that number very low. I don't think it's going to be up to 50%. If that number rises in terms of the amount of people that'll be in there, even though it's the Super Bowl, maybe 25%, maybe 30%. I might be reaching a little bit, but it's not even going to get to half full. So I think maybe between 25 and 30% will be the limit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're not going to be seeing a lot of the big elaborate Super Bowl parties. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, it's Tampa, it's not Miami." So, but I mean, like you said, I mean, the Bucks, they can just do what they usually do, prepping for games and stuff like that. So, sleep in your own beds. That's got to be a good thing if you're a Bucks player, right? You don't have to worry. And you know how the weather is, so you don't have to worry about that either. Weather won't be an issue, or at least it shouldn't be unless it rains or something like that. You know, if you're Kansas City, you know, you just gotta, you know, you've been there before, so you just sort of do what you usually do. I mean, there probably won't be, like you say, there won't be any elaborate big parties. You won't have a lot of celebrities there, unfortunately, because of COVID. I know Florida's a little more open. You know, we'll get to Florida and there, but Florida's had their issues with COVID. Let's remember that, kids. So I'm sure that the mayor there, I'm sure he is going to try and make sure that, you know, nothing gets too crazy. Like, you know, that the 7,500 essential workers have already been vaccinated, so that'll help a little bit. And like you said, so it's going to be maybe at most maybe 30% full. So just sort of, you know, close family members, you know, mother, you know, parents, wives, kids and stuff like that. So I'm sure they're all gonna. I'm sure the NFL is gonna put criteria and procedures in place so that, you know, you may have to take a test. You might have to, you know, get a COVID test or do temperature checks to make sure that you know, and make sure everyone's spread out 6 feet apart and whatnot. So we're not going to have like nothing too crazy. I mean, I don't know if the CBS people, you know, other than, you know, Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, and Tracy Wolfson and their production crew, I don't know if the NFL Today guys are going to be able to go, because you got a couple of guys that are up there. And of course, you know, James Brown's a cancer survivor, so you don't want to risk his health. So I don't know how they're going to do that unless they are going to do it like in a centralized, I should say, easy for me to say, location. But you're good. That's something they're going to have to think about. And I'm sure CBS is probably already like have it all mapped out, I'm sure.
Yeah, since they knew a year in advance they were going to broadcast the game, so I'm sure they had some plans in place. One quick thing before we move on. Do you remember technically it was played in 99, but do you remember the 1998 Atlanta Falcons?
Very well, yeah.
The Dirty Bird team. Yes. Remember what happened the night before? And I know he's still doing radio games for the Carolina Panthers now, not to slam this person, but Eugene Robinson got caught doing some things with the undercover worker. I'll just put it that way, keeping it clean for the kids.
Yeah, Google it, kids, Google it.
Yeah, and I think it was the same day or the day before he won the initial Walter Payton Man of the Year award. Of course, the league had to take it away, which was the only thing they had to do. Of course, the Denver Broncos won that Super Bowl, and John Elway won his back-to-back, and he retired and all that. I was thinking about that when we're just now discussing this subject. Just for this year, things are going to be different because players, even though it's the last game of the NFL season, players still going to have to wear their masks, practice social distancing, and they are going to be on lockdown. And I know that the traveling part, Tampa Bay doesn't have to worry about, but Kansas City does. But I think this actually helps Kansas City because even though it was a different world last year when they played the San Francisco 49ers in Miami, they were down there all week. We know we're not going to have media day this year like you normally do because everybody for Entertainment Tonight, Extra, somebody from a blog, Barstool Sports, and everybody else, especially is more for people who don't have a damn thing to do with sports. They're down there asking players stupid questions, Nickelodeon and all of that. Oh, what's your favorite president and all that stuff. You won't have to deal with that this year. But I think for Kansas City, this is going to be great because you really have to focus in on the game, and you really don't have to deal with the extra distractions. Now, with the NFL pull like this off in the future, assuming that things will get back to normal, which I'm cautiously hoping that they will for next season, I don't think so. Maybe it'll change some things here and there because let's be honest, it's the biggest party of the year for the NFL. And for Kansas City, you don't have to deal with the extra distractions really to, quote unquote, escape the protocols. So it's really going to be hard. So you're not going to have players out on a Saturday night and things of that nature because even though it's the last game of the year, you really don't want to risk your health or the safety and health of your teammates and other coworkers in the organization.
Oh no, dude, we're not gonna get a like Eugene Robinson or a Bear Robbins, we're not gonna, or Ray Lewis, we'll keep all that, we're trying to keep it, PG rated.
Google it, folks.
Yes, yeah, but yeah, look, you don't have to worry about that. And I think if you're look, I think if you're Bruce Arians and Andy Reid, I think you're okay with that. You're okay with, not having to worry about the extra distractions or the extracurricular activities going on. So there's not going to be a lot of stuff, not a lot of stuff, because like you said, the NFL is going to have a lot of that stuff on lockdown. So look, temperature checks, look, and I'm sure the NFL is happy that they got it this far. If they could just get to the finish line, and that's that this crazy season. Yes, we've had like some schedule maneuvering and whatnot, but we were able to get all the games in. Let's make sure we get the Super Bowl in. Let's have a great Super Bowl. We'll talk more about it, next week probably, more likely, but more than likely. But I mean, look, you're not gonna have to worry about that. So I think if you're both teams, I think that's actually a good thing. You don't have to worry about, since there's not going to be a lot of people allowed, to get near the players. Like you said, we're not going to have like the big elaborate media day, like like we've had in previous years because of everything. So that's actually a good thing. If you're the NFL, if you're the Bucks, and if you're the Chiefs coaching staffs, you're actually okay with that. And you know what? You're the coaches. If you're, like I said, if you're Bruce Arians and Andy Reid, you're okay with it not having this being too elaborate, sort of like a normal, regular football game.
Yeah. Also, real quickly, Kenny, before we take our break, a couple of things here football related. One, what would you grade the NFL for, assuming that nothing catastrophic happens if we get the Super Bowl in on time, which I think they will? What grade would you give the NFL? Consider all that we went through this season. There was no preseason. We started on time. There were some games moved around, but there were no games canceled. Players got paid. The networks didn't get their money back, so there was not a Week 18. What grade would you give the NFL?
I think I give it like a solid B. I think, look, are there some things that they could have done better? Yeah, but I think the fact that I'm sure Roger Goodell and the rest of the NFL executives are kind of like excelling. Okay, we got this far. The networks, if you're CBS, NBC, and Fox, and ESPN, you got your games in, you got your money. Look, you even got good ratings on Tuesday and Wednesday, so Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah.
That you got to be feeling pretty good about yourselves. And look, let's just get to the finish line. Let's just get there. And I give a solid B. I mean, look, with everything that went on with the Ravens and the Titans, with their COVID issues and all the craziness that happened down there, they were able to kind of, they got their seasons in, and they both made the playoffs, and they were able to kind of, they got it together, and testing and whatnot, the strict testing, and so I'm sure if you're Goodell and the rest of the execs, you're hoping that you don't have to go through this again next year. Hopefully you won't, probably maybe more of in a smaller, quote unquote smaller capacity. But I give them a B. What about you?
I'll give them a B plus A minus because, as we said before the season kicked off, that this wasn't going to go smoothly. The NFL did tell its teams that we may have some problems here. Should it arise, this is what was going to happen. We have a plan for this. We have a plan for that. Like you said, the NFL, they should Roger Goodell, the commissioner, should wipe his hands. Like, we got through that without too much damage. We shuffled some games around, but we didn't have to give any money back. There were no games canceled, so everybody's happy. So I'll give them an A minus, B plus. I'll probably more lean towards your grade, Lakeena, B plus, because there were no games canceled. Now, as far as next year, we'll have a sort of a normal all season. I know the combine, they changed some stuff for the combine for this year, so it's not going to be as much media access as in previous years, obviously due to the situation we're in right now. But I think after that, things should sort of get back to normal. We'll see what happens, what they do with the preseason next year, how the media covers training camp. Hopefully the world will be in a better place by then, which we all think and hope that we will. So the NFL has some things to work on, but it should be proud of it. So we talked about this in our previous episode. So Ken, like the NBA is dealing with their issues. We'll get into more on the other side of this timeout. But what the other sports are going through currently, you had to tip your head off to the NFL. They really learned from Major League Baseball because some of their players, i.e. the Miami Marlins, i.e. the St. Louis Cardinals, they didn't take it seriously when the baseball season got started. So they were reprimanded and they got the point. So the NFL took some lessons from Major League Baseball. And they did what they had to do, and so I'll give them a solid B+. Now, before we take a timeout, Matthew Stafford and the Lions are no more. The news broke over the weekend. Now the Lions are looking for are seeking a trade, and I think Matthew Stafford's contract has 3 years left on it.
Yeah,
At
about
the
3
time
years.
when at the time he signed it, he was the highest paid QB in the NFL. Of course, we all knew that status wasn't going to last long. One, I don't see anybody trading for him. He's still very good, but because of the money, I don't see that happening. So I think he will be released. And when that happens, which team you think that Matthew Stafford would fit on best?
There's a team about 3.5 hours south of us that needs a quarterback, and the team's built to win now, and that's Indianapolis. I mean, look, I think, he gets to play in the dome, so he won't have to worry about having to play in the elements. They got a retractable roof at Lucas Oil. But like you said, the defense is really good. You have an O-line that will protect you, or a good one of a couple of Pro Bowlers that will protect you. You've got receivers. Once Marlon Mack comes back, he'll be ready to go, and you'll have somebody to hand the ball off to. Maybe they can make some changes to the offseason. I don't know what their salary cap situation is, but I think the Colts might be a destination for him. I'm sure he's going to want to go someplace where he can win now. He's getting up there. He's over 30. He's other side of 30 now, so I'm sure he's going to want someplace where he can win a title. So I think maybe Detroit. Maybe Indianapolis, I should say, from Detroit. I mean, you don't have to travel too far. You'll be right there in the Midwest region. I know him and his wife and their kids have made a home there, so they don't have to travel too far. What's another one? Maybe a couple more. I've heard some people say that maybe the Dolphins, which is a little bit weird because you got you went through all this with Tua. Now you're gonna bring somebody like Stafford in. I think that's a little bit weird, but look, that team's equipped to take the next step. Maybe not win yet, but take the next step. So I think Indy, Detroit. I'm sure there's a couple more that are not at the top of my head. But what about you? What do you think? Yeah, look, I'm very big. Look, I'm super. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
I have two teams actually. That's one that came up to my mind. The first team, which these two teams are sleepers. The second team I'll get to in a second. The first one is New England Patriots.
Oh, yep.
And it's especially if Cam doesn't come back and Bill Belichick doesn't trust him. Matthew Stafford would be perfect for that team. Obviously, they had to pick up a stud wide receiver. Some of their defensive players will come back because they checked out this year due to concerns of COVID, and Bill Belichick will have a full offseason to implement his plan. So I think Matthew Stafford, he could work in New England. He's still I'm talking about Belichick, or Belichick as we call him on this program. Belichick is still the coach. He can still win now if want to. They have those draft picks. They ended up 7-9 this year. If they would have had, I know Cam dealt with his issues with COVID early in the season. If that wasn't the case, they would have definitely made the playoffs. So if they choose to move off of Newman and they pick up Stafford, they can still make the playoffs. So, and also too, good for Matt Patricia knocked on Belichick's door and said, "Give me a job." And what did Belichick do? Give him a job. So I think our good friend Lamont would like that story.
Yes.
But I think Stafford could fit in New England. But here's the second team that no one's talking about. And you heard it here first. No inside information or anything like that. The second team, especially if this quarterback retires, the Washington football team. If Alex Smith retires, I know Taylor Heineke, that's his name. He did a heck of a job in that playoff game against Tampa Bay. But if Alex Smith retires, I don't know what the cap situation is for Washington. I'm assuming it's not that bad. You can take a look at Stafford because that team can use a quarterback boost, and they can make a jump.
I didn't think about that. I think that would be a. And look,
no one's talking about it. So Stafford in Washington, you can get a couple of good years out of him. He's a couple of years younger than Alex Smith.
And the NFC East is very winnable. So
yeah,
he could,
exactly.
He doesn't have to lead the NFC. That division is very winnable. So do you? So yeah, I didn't think
they
about it.
They got a good running game in Antonio Gibson.
Yeah.
Terry McLaurin is a stud wide receiver.
Yes.
I believe next year he'll be going to his third year. And you still have a young defense that you can build upon.
Yeah, Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's a pretty good front seven, young front seven they got. Maybe just improve a little bit on the secondary. But yeah, that is interesting. Like I said, that NFC East is very winnable. So, because do you trust the other teams in that division? You got Eagles with a new coach. Whether or not Carson Wentz, they keep him. The Giants. Do you trust the Giants and the Cowboys?
And it's still rebuilding, by the way.
Yep. And
I'm talking about the Giants.
The Giants, yeah. The Cowboys. Do you trust the Cowboys? I don't. So yeah, I that might be an interesting fit there. That could work, and I'm sure Ron Rivera would love to have him, on his team, especially like you said, if Alex Smith does decide to retire. Or here's another one for you, since like we talked about on Friday's podcast, there's definitely some little bit of disagreement between Jared Goff and Sean McVay. Maybe the Rams, maybe Los Angeles.
If LA can get out of that contract with Jared Goff, I don't know if they can. They barely did with Todd Gurley, but I don't know if they can do anything with that contract with Jared Goff. If somehow the GM Sam Snead is able to get out of that contract, good for them. Like I said, Stafford could be a good place there. But they can't do anything with that contract with Jared Goff. I don't know all the stipulations in there, but if they can't get out of that contract, they stuck with him.
Well, also too, there's another veteran quarterback also in the NFC North that might be on his way out, and that's Aaron Rodgers. If you heard his presser, he said that he doesn't know what's going to happen. So what about Aaron Rodgers? Would it be an interesting place for him? Because if they release him like before June 1st, that's a lot of money. That I think about 25, 21, 23 million or something like that. But if they release him post that, they will take a big cap hit. So there are a lot of, like I said, the Colts maybe. There might be a team. What's another one? I think Mike Florio. I'll look that up. But what do you think about Mr. Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, Rodgers will have some options for sure. Like I said, Indianapolis is one. He could go to Detroit. I doubt it with Dan Campbell.
Oh, no.
I don't see that happening. That team is not ready to win. And plus, they have Kenny Galladay, who's a star wide receiver, who's a free agent this offseason. So I don't see that. But Mr. Rodgers will have some options. He can go to San Francisco if I repeat, if Jimmy Garoppolo is released.
Yeah.
He can go there.
He can go. Yeah,
because that Rodgers was supposed to get drafted by them, and they passed up on for Alex Smith. So there's a storyline for you right there. So Mr. Rodgers will have some options should the Packers release it at some point during this offseason. Now, one quick question before – did you have something to say before I asked the question?
Just one more team, and I think this is the thing that I think a lot of people are thinking about. How about New Orleans for either Stafford or Rodgers? Assuming that Breeze retires, Jameis Winston might be gone. You can only use Taysom Hill so much.
That's a valuable option for both of them. I would keep them in the mix.
Just a thought. We'll talk. Yeah. We'll have more on this, in the weeks to come. So don't worry, guys.
Now, switching it back to locally here in Chicago before we call a timeout. Ryan Pace, going back to Matthew Stafford, assuming that he gets released, which we all know he will. No one's going to trade for him because of that big contract. Do you have the guts to check in on one availability of Mr. Matt Stafford?
Well, if you're Stafford, would you?
Do you kick the tires on him? Me personally, I would.
Yeah, sure, of course.
I'm not saying it's the end all be all, but you got to check in on him.
I would say at least give him a call at least, or a Zoom call.
Yeah.
But if you're Stafford,
that's what I'm asking.
Well, if you're Stafford, would you want to come here? I mean, A-Rob might be gone. Jimmy Graham will probably end up either retired or going somewhere else. We'll see what the cap situation is, because they're gonna use the cap as an excuse, because you know how the Bears are. So you know how they are. So I'm sure they'll kick the tires and give them a call. But if you're Stafford, do you even want to come here? What about you?
I will kick the tires. I'm not saying Stafford will be the answer, but take a look at the free agency list. We're going to break it down 1,000 times between now and the NFL draft. But, Ryan Fitzpatrick's out there, assuming that Cam Newton's going to be out there. Tyrod Taylor of the Los Angeles Chargers, he may be out there. It's not really a great list this offseason. Uh, we all know that Pace needs to draft one in this upcoming 2021 draft. Will they use their first round pick to do so? Will they use a second or third round pick? I don't know how many picks they have for this upcoming draft, but if you don't want to sign any of those guys I just mentioned, you'll have to draft one. And I think Stafford is you have to at least kick the tires on to get his gauge of interest. Does he want to come here or not?
Well, yeah, I think like you said, I mean, would he want, like I've been saying, would he want to come here? Like I said, with all the things we mentioned. So look, I'm sure Stafford is going to want to go someplace where he wants to win. There's some good options out there. I just don't think the Bears are at the top of that list, but we'll see.
Yeah, like I said, Allen Robinson, if he's back, that would help. But right now, we just don't know.
Yeah. They could franchise tag him, but I'm sure if you ask him, give him some true serum, he probably may not want to come back, but that's just but I don't know. Well, look, we saw on social media he scrubbed everything about this time last year, so definitely something to look out for.
Yes. We'll take a quick 20-second timeout. On the flip side, we'll get into the Chicago Bulls weekend action. Also, there were other great games from the NBA this past weekend. We also get into college basketball. Lakeena will have her hot takes from college basketball, and we'll have a whole lot more. You're listening to Second City Sports. Ready.
Okay. Welcome back to Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style.
All right, along with Sydney Brown, I'm Lakeena McGee. You can follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, a.k.a. Sid the Kid, on Twitter and the Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
And don't forget to follow the show on We Are Real Radio at War Media. You know, wherever you get your podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeart. I mean, it's all there. Wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, we're on the YouTube. We're on the Tube. Just like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends. You can check out all our previous episodes if you're new to the show, or if you want to replay some of your favorites. It's all right there.
Yes. We show our receipts, folks, as the young kids would say on YouTube. We show our receipts. For the podcast, it's War on Anchor. For YouTube, it's War Media. So there's no excuse for you guys not to check us out. Please rate, share, comment, share, subscribe on YouTube. Please give us a rating, a review, a positive one, hopefully, for our podcast. We do this for you guys. We love you very much, and we hope you can continue to support us.
Absolutely.
Now, a team that needs support is the Chicago Bulls, as we'll focus on them first. We'll get to the rest of the action from the NBA from over the weekend in just a moment. But first, we'll focus on the Chicago Bulls. They split their 2 games over the weekend. A couple of notes before we continue. As of this podcast, when it's released, they would have already played their game against the Boston Celtics on Monday. I know there's a big weather storm for some parts of the Chicagoland area. So as of right now, when this podcast released, the game between the Bulls and Celtics would have already been played. And number 2, this upcoming Wednesday's game between the Chicago Bulls and the Memphis Grizzlies from Memphis has been postponed due to COVID issues regarding the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, reviewing the action from over the weekend for our Chicago Bulls, we'll start off with the good news. Last Friday's action at Charlotte against the Hornets, the Bulls came away with a 13-point victory, 123-110. Zach LaVine did his thing as usual for the Chicago Bulls. He led the team with 25 points. Gordon Hayward led Charlotte with 34 points. Take a look at the box numbers from the game on Friday for Chicago. Lauri Markkanen, he was aggressive again, 23 points off of 10 and 17 shooting. My guy, Daniel Gafford, had 7 points and grabbed 6 rebounds in 19 minutes of action. Kobe Wright bounced back and had a big game with 18 points and 8 assists off of 6 of 15 shooting. And off the bench for Chicago, you asked, Otto Porter Jr., 13 points in 23 minutes off of 6 of 9 shooting. And Mr. Thaddeus Young scored 8 points in 25 minutes of action. Denzel Valentine contributed with 8 points, off of 2 of 5 3-point shooting in 17 minutes of action. Reviewing this game, Lakeena just watches some of that game from Friday. As we talked about on the show, who were going to be the contributing factor players coming off the bench, besides Otto Porter Jr. and my guy Daniel Gafford. We start to see that this team is mostly healthy now, enough for head coach Billy Donovan to use many players in many different combinations. I see that this is a well-balanced team. I'm not saying they're going to do anything big yet, but you're starting to see some guys in some key roles contributing positively. At least you saw that on Friday.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I mean, Levine being the facilitator like he usually is. I mean, some people have said that, hey, let's trade him now. His stock won't be even higher. I mean, let's slow down for a second, folks. I mean, I think we're kind of going ahead of ourselves in that front. But look, Kobe White was able to bounce back from a couple of bad games, had 18 points. Lowry had 23. You had Garrett Temple, off the bench, 15 points, sort of helping out with Otto Porter Jr. as well. They actually made some key defensive stops late, which that's always a good thing. And this has been sort of the team's weakness is their defense. They're still working on that. They're was weird. They're in the top 10 in a lot of the offensive categories in the NBA, but they're near the bottom tier when it comes to defense. So they're still working on that. But look, baby steps, folks. I mean, look, you're competent and confident, and that's what you want from a if you're a Bulls fan right now. And look, you felt good about that performance, but on the flip side, that next night, you're facing the defending champions, LeBron, AD. Remember, he didn't play in their first meeting, so but the Lakers showed you why they're rolling ahead of the Bulls right now, but that's okay. Because that was a lot to ask, right, for them to come back, the very next night and play and try to beat the defending champs. that was a big task. But look, they were up, they were down 30 at the half. They could have crawled under in the field position. Just they could have lost by 25, 30, or perhaps maybe even 40 points. But the fact that they kept fighting. They only lost by 11. That last year they would have done that, but this year they're not doing that. They're showing that fight. They couldn't really rest too much, the Lakers. So you gotta be feeling pretty encouraged if you're a Bulls fan right now.
I almost look at this Bulls team like we looked at this year's Chicago Bears team. When you play against an opponent that's equal or lesser of you, you usually play your best. But in the case of the Chicago Bulls, as we said throughout this season, they're not there yet. Of course, they're not at championship level. Some people may think they're a playoff team. Maybe they'll end up happening this year, but they're not there yet. And so when you mention the effort against the Lakers, I'm not going to say it was a lackluster effort overall, but just the Lakers are better than you right now, and we expected that. Like you mentioned, Anthony Davis, who had a big game coming back to his hometown, had 37 points. You weren't going to stop him. The Lakers' game plan was to establish him early and often. That's what happened. LeBron James had a couple of highlight dunks. He really didn't have to do too much. It was all about the Laker reserves, and which we'll break down the box score from that game in just a moment. But if you're the Bulls, you have to bounce back. Yes, those performances are going to happen. Just like we talked about, they had to learn how to win these games down the stretch without blowing leads. It looks like they were starting to turn around. But I look at Saturday's game as more of it wasn't your night. The Lakers are better than you, but going forward, you had to bring your best against better teams like the Lakers or the Clippers or the Spurs. I know the Spurs are going through their transition right now, but or against the Heat or against Milwaukee, which they got blown out to start this 2021 calendar year. So as much as we talk about consistency with this Bulls team, they're going to have to bring it against better teams if they want to get to where they eventually want to go. We all know that the roster is not going to be the same, but still with this group, they're going to have to learn to bring it every night, especially against better teams.
Well, and also too, I mean, you kind of that fight that they showed, and look, they like you said, they were able to cut into that lead. And look, you're gonna have at some point you are gonna have to try to beat some of the top tier teams. But the fact that you're competitive with those teams right now, I think showing you that is not it's not too far out. It's not too far away that you probably can beat those league elites, and those sort of top tier teams. And you're kind of sort of, scratching and clawing your way. And look, we're all laying a foundation here, and who knows how this roster is going to look next season. But I think you're off to a pretty good start if you're a Bulls fan. Like I said, you got to be feeling pretty good about yourself if you're a Bulls fan right now.
You're listening to Second City Sports. Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Sydney Brown as we discuss the Chicago Bulls in the NBA. Lakeena, let's focus in on Patrick Williams. He had a bad game on Friday in terms of scoring 4 points, but he did bounce back with 13 points off of 5 for 12 shooting in 31 minutes of action. I know some people want to compare Patrick Williams to a young Kawhi Leonard. I think he'll eventually get it, but defensively, he's there. It looks like he wants to get in your grill and compete with you. And LeBron James, as we mentioned a moment ago, he made a comment about Patrick Williams. He could be the future of the NBA. I'm just paraphrasing a little bit after they played the first time a couple weeks ago. Offensively, it looks like he has a game like a Scottie Pippen in terms of the jump shot off the glass. I still want to see him improve in that. But it looks like this kid has some of the intangibles. Remember, folks, he's only 19 years old. But it seems like to me that he wants it bad, and he wants to improve. I just hope that we can see a growth going upwards as the season goes along.
Yeah, I hope so too. Like I said, there's a reason why he won Sixth Man of the Year last year, and when he was at Florida State, and he was a big part of Florida State being right there. If not for COVID, they probably could have at the very least gotten to the Final Four at the very least.
Yeah.
But I think, look, he's got the game to do it. Look, let's not put him at Kawhi level yet. I think he's only, like you say, he's only 19, so let's kind of give him a chance. Look, he's eager. He wants to get better. He's a great kid off the court, I should say. So I think that the intangibles are there for him, and I think, look, you got good coaching around him, so to kind of help sort of improve him. Billy Donovan raves about him, so I think he could be on his way there to be kind of at that consistent all-star level.
And also, too, Kobe White, as we mentioned at the top, after struggling for the last few games, he's turned it around a little bit. He looked great, as I mentioned before, in that Friday win over Charlotte. He kind of had a decent game against the Lakers, but you can't really judge that too much only because that game was a blowout from the start. But you start to see some signs from him. As I said before, and I'll keep repeating this, I didn't expect him to be John Stockton and lead the league in assists, but he'll probably end up being a combo guard when it's all said and done, which is not a bad thing. But his game is he's a shooter, but he's a scorer first with a scorer's mentality, which is not a bad thing. But I think he could be that type of player who can make some plays here and there, which I don't think is a bad thing. Me personally, I compare him to Gilbert Arenas, not just because of his jersey number, but he has that type of game that he can go off at any time. And that's something that you need. And it's not a bad thing either.
No, after all, I think he can be a good combo guard. Look, could his defense perhaps maybe use some work? Absolutely. He'll be the first to tell you that. But look, I think sort of the skills are there for him. He works on his free throws. He works after games, especially here at home. So look, I think he has the discipline. So I think that'll definitely help him a lot too. So look, he's getting better, and look, we just want these guys to get better. And maybe if you decide to build around these guys when the Bulls are ready to kind of contend to contend for the Eastern Conference, you're already kind of halfway there, I think.
Yeah, you're halfway there, which is just hopefully that the Bulls can continue to use these steps and improve, and hopefully things will turn around at some point. Take a look at their schedule for this upcoming week. As we told you at the top, when this episode is released, the game against Boston would already have been played. Of course, Wednesday's game is postponed at Memphis due to the Grizzlies' COVID issues. Of course, over the weekend, we'll have a couple of mediocre teams coming into the United Center. Saturday, the Portland Trail Blazers will be here. And, of course, next Monday, Tom Thibodeau and the New York Knicks will be here for a quick 2-game set. We'll probably dive in more into that on our next podcast. So that's the Bulls' schedule for this upcoming week. So the Boston game we'll review in our next episode. So that game should be fun. So we'll review that. Now as we transition over to the rest of the association, what games made your eyes light up over the weekend?
The Denver Phoenix games. Those games were very entertaining to
Yes.
watch. Denver won both those games, which like I said, they needed to win those games because they were sort of kind of meandering at 500 and now over 500. I think Phoenix, unfortunately, I think their lack of experience. Yes, you got CP3 there, but you
Mm-hmm.
need another veteran to kind of sort of help kind of facilitate that. And that, unfortunately, that's what happened in the end. They gave up 120 points in the second one, 130 in the first half, and then the first game I should say, and they were up big, so they lost that game. But look, I mean, Denver had a nice weekend, so they were able to kind of get back on track. We'll see how they do the rest of these next few weeks. I mean, the Clippers, they've won 7 in a row. Doing what they
Mm-hmm.
usually do. So, I'm not too worried about them. The Jazz have won 8 in a row. The Grizzlies, unfortunately, before they had to pause, they had won 5 in a row. So that was unfortunate
Mm-hmm.
for them. Bad time for that pause. In the East, the East has been kind of up and down. I mean, the Sixers has won 3 in a row, but everyone else has sort of been kind of up and down lately. I know the Bucks had a nice win last night. The Pacers have been kind of up and down too. The Hawks have lost.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have lost. The Knicks have lost a couple in a row too. They've kind of been on a slide. Although Toronto, nice to see them win a couple in a row. Maybe they're starting to kind of get back on track. So some very interesting sort of maneuvering going on in this last sort of weekend. And what about you?
The Brooklyn Nets impressed me with their comeback victory over the Miami Heat this past Saturday night. Shout out to our good friend Alana Tackhauer. I know she's feeling low right now with the with the Miami Heat being a couple of games under 500. But James Harden didn't play his best game on Saturday, but he did enough down the stretch, only scoring 12 points. Bills. Kyrie Irving with the with a game high 28. Kevin Durant chipped in with 31. But Bam Adebayo, who was an All-Star last year, he scored a career high 41 points. If you're the Miami Heat, I know Jimmy Butler's out right now, but where are you going to get your scoring from?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just unfortunate. Look, but also you see those uniforms they wore against the Nets. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
what. Yeah. I'm just gonna leave it there. But yeah, you wonder what is wrong with Miami. I know Butler's not there, like you said, he's not there right now. But I don't know if because they're still sort of exhausted from playing. I'm sure they didn't expect to be in the bubble as long as they were. But you kind of
Hmm.
have to get together here, and I think someone's got to step up in Jimmy's absence because Jimmy's actually going to be gone another week. So
Yeah.
somebody's got to step up. And I know Bam had his best, probably had a career high, but Duncan Robinson, come on, what's going on here? And they play again tonight, so as of this recording, the game will be over with. But we'll probably talk a
Hmm.
little bit about it on Friday. But there's somebody's got to step up for the Heat. I mean, for the Heat because Olinia, come on, what are you doing? Goran Dragic, he's been good, but he can be better. Also, Duncan Robinson too. Somebody else has to kind of come off the bench. Kendrick Nunn had 18 off the bench, for them to kind of keep them in it.
Hmm.
Also help kind of, give them that comeback that they almost did. But if you're the Heat, if you're a Heat fan, I know Alana's probably like, okay, somebody's else has to step up in Jimmy's absence.
Also, too, another team that's been on a roll is the Utah Jazz. We talked about them a little bit on our last podcast. They defeated the Warriors on Saturday, 127 to 108. Donovan Mitchell led the Jazz with 23 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Steph Curry led the Warriors with 24 points, but he set a record surpassing Reggie Miller for a second on the all-time three-pointers made list. I don't have to say too much here, Lakeena, but we all know that Steph Curry is the first ballot Hall of Famer, and I know some people say that his quote unquote legacy is on the line this year because there's no Klay Thompson. Draymond Green keeps getting injured, so congrats to Steph Curry. I'm not going to say anymore. It'll be wasted time as far as dissecting Steph Curry's career, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, he's a first ballot, no doubt. So let's not even worth talking about. Portland had a nice win against the Knicks last night. Got a much
Hmm.
needed win there, especially with Jurkic. He's going to be gone a few weeks, so you know, I think that someone's going to have to step. Also, CJ McCollum's out too, so it's gonna be the Dame and it's gonna be a Dame and Carmelo show. It looks like Dame had who just had boy girl twins, by the way, him his fiance. So
congrats
to them. So he was kind of a one man wrecking crew real. So somebody's else is gonna have to step up. Although Anthony Simmons he had 16 off the bench too for them, so that helps a little bit in their win against Knicks. But somebody's gonna have to step up, especially with both McCollum and Nurkic out for a little bit.
Yeah, so injuries has been the question for Portland over the last few years, but like you said, there's a few guys who are gonna have to step in and step up to help out Mr. Lillard. I did watch some of that game on Sunday night, as you mentioned. They beat the Knicks. I kind of like that Knicks squad. They're a couple of steps behind the Chicago Bulls, but you can see what a difference a real head coach makes. Tom Thibodeau, stay up. You can tell that a real coaching makes a big difference, and especially in young teams like that. A couple of games from Sunday that caught my eye. I did watch a little bit of this game. It was the Toronto Raptors and the Indiana Pacers, the first of their 2 games stint to wrap up the weekend. From Sunday, the Raptors got by the Pacers 107-102. The Raptors, as we mentioned, Lakeena, a couple weeks ago, they were struggling to jump out of the gate to start the season, but right now, as of this recording, they are 7-9. And so it looks like things are starting to turn around a little bit. Things are going in the opposite direction for the Pacers after getting out to a surprising start.
Yeah, I think, remember LeVert's not there right now, battling his health issues. So that's not helping them. And it'll look like I've been saying, I mean, Toronto, not being able to play in Canada, I think that played a little bit of a part. I think they were still adjusting. Looks like they're starting to adjust now. I mean, like I said, that Raptors team is too talented. So I'm glad that they've won a couple in a row. Hopefully, they'll be able to win tonight and sweep that little mini sort of series, if you will, against the Pacers. We'll see what they do there. They got a couple of tough ones, later on this week. So we'll see what they do. I think, like I said, the talent's there. That's a team that's way too talented for them to not be near the top of the East.
Let's also show some love to the Charlotte Hornets after losing to the Bulls on their home court on Friday. They bounced back on Sunday to get a much-needed road win over the Orlando Magic, 107-104. Another 30-piece game for Gordon Hayward. He scored a season-high 39 points. And also to the Wizards, welcome back to playing after dealing with your COVID issues. It seems like it's been forever, but they lost to the San Antonio Spurs down there in the state of Texas, 121-101. Dejounte Murray led the Spurs with 11 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists for a triple-double. Bradley Beal led all scorers with 31 points. I know the Wizards are 3-9. Lakeena, I know some people may have thought that the perhaps would have snuck into the playoffs right now, but making up those games, especially during the second half of the season, may come back to bite them in the you-know-what. As I mentioned before in our other segment, the San Antonio Spurs, they are currently now sitting with a record of 9-8. Maybe they can sneak back into the playoff picture, but this is not a bad team, but this is not those teams that we remember growing up either as they go through their transition.
Yeah, they're plus you got Dallas right there behind them. You got Golden State behind them. Also Houston too. So it's gonna be just I know OKC's lost 3 in a row, but I think they'll probably be right there as well. So it's definitely gonna be a log jam for those last couple of spots, especially with the play-in games and whatnot and play-in series. I guess they're calling it. So it's going to be very interesting, especially out west, to see because there's definitely going to be a battle for those last couple of spots.
Yeah, it will be, and things will only get interesting. What are the? I don't know if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the schedule for this upcoming week, Lakeena, but there's one game that's jumping out to me, at least from the start, and this game would have been played when this episode is released. But the Denver Nuggets and the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas is kind of been up and down this year. Luka Doncic is starting to pick it up, but Denver's starting to pick it up as well. As you mentioned at the top, they swept the road series against the Phoenix Suns over the weekend. Those two teams are at a crossroads. Denver's starting to pick it up, but Dallas needs to turn around. They're flirting around the 500 mark.
Yeah, we'll see if they'll be able to get it together. That should be a fun game. I'm looking forward to that one. I'll probably watch that game via my laptop. So That should be a very interesting game because that should be very entertaining. And like you said, I mean, like we've been saying, I mean, Denver, won those 2 games against Phoenix. They needed those, so that should be a very interesting game tonight. You know, Bulls and Celtics. I mean, look, I know Tatum will be able to play tonight. He got the green light last night, so we'll see what he does. We'll see if the Bulls can hang with the top teams in the East. OKC and Portland, that should be a good one tonight. There is one tomorrow that I'm looking forward to. The Clippers and the Hawks. That's going to be a very interesting game because the Hawks have been up and down too, and the Clippers, we'll see. They're tied with, of course, the Lakers for the top of the West right now, so that should be a very interesting game there. So what games are you looking forward to this week in the NBA?
I'm looking at the Thursday national TV schedule for Thursday. I know TNT is shaking its head, at least for this first game. The Clippers and the Heat. No Jimmy Butler. It looks like it may be the old school Clippers. Not so much Lob City, but it may be that game may be out of hand early. Of course, the second game of that doubleheader is the Portland Trail Blazers traveling to Houston to take on the Rockets. That should be an interesting, high-scoring game. Excuse me. And the game underneath that is the Warriors and Suns. We didn't talk about this at the top. Devin Booker will miss the games against Denver over the weekend. Yeah. I don't know if he's going to come back by this time. But those the games I'm looking forward to on Thursday.
Yeah, he's been banged up a little bit, so we'll see if he'll be cleared by then by the time they play those games. So yeah, some very interesting games coming up in the NBA this week.
Yeah, and also, too, ESPN has a highlight game for Wednesday, and that takes place in Philadelphia at 6:30 p.m. Chicago time. That's the Los Angeles Lakers and the Philadelphia 76ers. I want to see what Doc's crew what he does against perhaps the best team in the NBA.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be an interesting game there. We'll see how that matches up. Could it be a finals preview? Maybe some people are saying, but again, we'll see. I mean, that should be a fun one there. Let's see. Well, let's see what else. I mentioned Brooklyn and Atlanta. That should be an interesting one there. We talked about the Nuggets and the Heat, so that's going to be those are some interesting. Those are going to be some interesting games this week, definitely.
I have to refreshen the throat.
Of course. So definitely some interesting games coming up in NBA this week, no doubt.
Yes. You're listening to Second City Sports as we head down the home stretch along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. Lakeena, what caught your eye in the world of college basketball this weekend?
Some very one coming out the gate, off the court. Michigan unfortunately has had to pause all of their athletic activities, not just the men's and the women's hoops, but everything because I guess there's a new COVID strain, and I guess that strain was discovered in Ann Arbor, I guess in the facilities. So they've had to clean, they got to pause everything and clean everything. So. And it was unfortunate because the men's team actually is in the top 4. They went up to number 4, but now that they're going to be out for 2 weeks, so that's gonna you feel bad for Juwan Howard because they were starting to get on a roll. So yeah, you feel for them. Also, Shaka Smart announced earlier this morning that he tested positive for COVID. It looks like they will be able to play against Oklahoma. That game is supposed to be tonight. So it looks like they'll be able to play that game, but unfortunately, he won't be there to coach them. So we'll see. He'll be quarantined. So we'll see what happens there. Now, as for the action, Baylor with a nice win against Oklahoma State. OK State without Cade Cunningham, who's still recovering from who was going through COVID protocols. But Baylor was able to pull off the big win there. Also, Villanova beat Providence. Missouri with a nice win against Tennessee. Oklahoma upsetting Kansas. Kansas losing 3 in a row for the first time, I think, since like the early 2000s.
Yeah, what's going on with Bill Self and his program?
Well, some people said this is not the most talented team Kansas has, even though they've been like in the top 10, top 15. They were actually in the top 5 at one point. But I think that lack of talent, I think that one of their guys is out right now. So I think that's definitely not helping them in that front. But that's why KU, I should say, is having their struggles. Ohio State with another big road win against Wisconsin. Creighton giving a welcome to UConn back to the Big East by beating them pretty handily by 8 points. Syracuse with this, the upset, quote unquote upset, beating Virginia Tech pretty easily. So definitely some interesting, college hoops. I mean, UNC beat NC State. There were a couple. Arizona beat Arizona State. They actually played again. They actually play again tonight. But yeah, so definitely interesting. They're interesting games. Kentucky got a nice win. DePaul got a nice win against Marquette. I mean, we'll see. It's going to be hard for them to make up all those
DePaul
games.
actually played a game?
Yeah, I know, right? But it's going to be hard for them. It's going to be hard for them to kind of
Not to make too much light of the situation, but
well, yeah, I mean, you're right, and unfortunately, I don't think the game's going to be there for them to kind of make up for all those games. But yeah, so that's some of the things that I kind of looked up at. Rutgers got a nice win against Indiana. They didn't that when they had lost like 4 in a row, so they got a nice bounce back win there. Some of the other games, Loyola's been on a roll too. They beat Bradley. They've been on a roll in the Missouri Valley. So
I did watch that game a little bit. So I know Bradley's barely over 500, but it looks like Loyola is usually around that time, at least over the last couple of years since they made that trip to the Final Four. This is usually the time they usually get it together. So hopefully things are turning around for Porter Rosal and their crew up there on the north side of Chicago.
absolutely, they totally deserve it. So yeah, so I know you didn't watch too much college hoops, but what actually caught your attention?
As you mentioned with the score of the Oklahoma-Kansas game, as you mentioned, I never seen it goes way beyond Kansas. I've never seen so many teams struggle this year. Of course, you got to throw in Kentucky in there. I know they're 5-9, 4-3 in the SEC, but your traditional top teams in college basketball, they're not having the world's greatest years, at least to many experts and pundit standards. As I mentioned, Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina. Part of the reason is COVID. At least that's part of it because everybody has to deal with it. But I think you may hit on the earlier point, which is probably the main point. It's not as much talented guys coming to those programs as you had in years past. We always talk about this. The one and done players, the media of the top tier programs have been doing this for a long time. We all know that Coach Mike Krzyzewski, Chicago's very own, the head coach of Duke, he didn't want to participate in it, but to keep that program going, to keep that money going into that program, he has to have those type of players on the squad, even if he has it for 1 year, i.e. Zion Williamson and other players from recent history, Jabari Parker from a few years ago. So this really is the main problem that I think that your traditional top teams are having dominating seasons.
Well, yeah, and look, Kansas he's having a streak the first time since 2013. And like you said, so I think the talent is not there. Like I've been saying, I mean, Kansas, people said this is not the most talented team, although there is talent there. It's like there's nobody there. There's like a bunch of no names there, but the talent is there. But like you said, I mean, COVID, also the crowd, the lack of crowd in some of these arenas. There's got to play a factor of not having a crowd in Cameron. I think that's playing a factor too in the Duke struggles because they can't use that as their sixth man, if you will. Same thing in a lot of these Big Ten schools. I mean, that's why Wisconsin's been having their struggles at home. They've lost I think like four home games, which is they'll use that much in 1 year at home at the Kohl Center. So not having that crowd, I mean. That have that home court advantage. I mean, that's sort of playing into a lot of it as well.
Yeah, and it does, and you can tell watching these games. I know I can, and most people with a sense of common sense in their brain can tell that many of these college kids use the home crowd to their advantage. Even some teams that played on the road, they use that to their advantage. Of people booing them to get them going to get their game up. But that's been a huge difference as well. I don't think many people are talking about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you've been saying, not having a crowd at Cameron. That's why you saw some of the upsets you saw against Duke earlier this season. Fog Allen. I know it's limited there, but you got to think not having the big crowd. I think that's sort of, not that's not really helping them, in their home court. And like I said, I mentioned Wisconsin, the Kohl Center is one of the loudest places in the country. The fact that there's nobody there, they've already lost like four home games already. So that's a big issue with these teams, and I think a lot of people aren't talking about it.
Yeah, like I said, we all knew that the college athletics, especially college basketball, we're going to have challenges because we're still in the middle of this second wave right now. Hopefully we're getting towards the end of it, but we still have the month of February and March to go. I I think let me preface by saying this. I saw a couple of tweets including a friend of the show, Brooke Riceborough from ESPN, suggesting that college basketball should take a pause between now and at the end of February, I believe, is to get everything together, and then jump right into the conference tournaments, and then we'll have March Madness in the state of Indiana. What do you think about that? I think if it gets any worse, I think the NCAA should take that route, but we all know the NCAA, common sense doesn't register with them. That's why I don't think it's going to happen.
I've heard. Yeah, I saw some other tweets very similar to hers. Hey, Brooke, by the way, if you're gonna listen to this, got to get you back on the show soon. But I've seen other people say the same thing, that maybe, especially with with this new variant that's happening, especially what's happening in Michigan, the fact that they've had to pause their athletics for 2 weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to do that, especially if it does get worse. I mean, like I said, Nebraska still paused. I mean, there have been we've had some programs decide to opt out, especially on the women's side. So that might be something that might be something that they may have to think about doing. I know of course, the NCAA is probably not going to want to do that because that's less money for them. But talking about people's safeties, you're seeing coaches who a lot of them have pre-existing conditions. Some of them are cancer survivors, and some of them a few of them are even up there in age. So you have to take their feelings into account too. You have guys that are in similar situations, so you don't want to perhaps. So look what happened to Keontae Johnson over at down in Florida. I mean, he had COVID and collapsed on the court and almost died. So you don't want to have that situation. So if you have to pause for a week or two to sort of get everything together, make sure everybody is healthy, and perhaps maybe come back during those last couple of weeks of the regular season as we can go to the conference tournaments. We'll see what they do, but it's going to be very interesting though, because I don't know if it'll get to that point, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do. What about you?
I won't be surprised either, but like I said before, when it comes to NCAA, they have no common sense, and I know they're trying to be like the NBA and the NFL, so they'll have to power their way through this thing. But it wouldn't be such a bad idea. But they're going to try to get in as many games as possible, even though these college athletes are not traditionally essential workers. To those listening on a podcast, I'm using air quotes here. Even though they're not traditionally essential workers, they're used as essential workers because, as you mentioned, there's a big payday at the end of the road here. But as I always say, everybody gets paid except for the athletes, and the system must be revamped. But that's a whole another conversation for a whole nother time.
Well, yeah, that's a whole nother issue for a whole nother episode. But you raised a good point. I mean, unfortunately, like we talked about it during the college football season. I mean, these guys are not, they're not being treated as essential workers, and this is what they are, and they should be getting paid. They should be getting compensated. A lot of these guys, I'm sure some of them have pre-existing conditions, so a lot of them are risking themselves to put a product out there on the court or on the field or on the court in this case. So it's definitely something the NCAA is going to be thinking about, should be thinking about. And look, I'm sure, we've seen conferences have said, look, we're not doing anything. Look, we're starting with the football. I mean, they're supposed to be starting to play football in about a month with the FCS, the 1AA, if you will. So, maybe do they go that route? Who knows? But the fact that there was no tournament last year in basketball, they lost a lot of money. So they're going to try and we're going to try and power our way through this. And I don't see them taking the 2-week pause. But like I said, if things get worse, they may not have a choice. But we'll see. We'll see. It's gonna be interesting. We'll see within the next week or two.
Let's end this episode on a high note, shall we? For the next couple minutes. Staying local, our Chicago Blackhawks, as we transition over to the National Hockey League. I said on our last episode, if you don't at least split against the Detroit Dead Wings, there's something wrong with you. They swept the weekend series. They defeated the Detroit Red Wings 5-2 on Friday and 6-2 in front of a national television audience on Sunday, 6-2. I hope I'm pronouncing these guys' names correctly. Pia Suter had a hat trick with 3 goals against Detroit. Connor Murphy chipped in with a goal and assist from the defensive from the Chicago Blue Line. Patrick King scored the goal on Friday. He had 2 helpers on Sunday. And Kevin Lankinen, I'm not putting him in the Hall of Fame, but he's been doing the job in net so far this season. I'm not saying you should give him the Williams Jennings Trophy, the best goalie of the regular season. I'm not saying give him that yet, but Jeremy Collins, even last year when he had Crawford and Robin Leonard on the roster, he went with a hot hand. Of course, at this time last year, he went with Robin Leonard. Of course, we all saw what happened. He got traded out of here because the Hawks didn't have enough money to give him. But with that being said, Lankinen's doing the job right now. I like this team. But I think we talked about this before we started recording, Lakeena. Even though Detroit's in the specialized division this year, if you play Detroit every night, you'll be the best team in hockey. But since that's not the case, you'll have to go through Nashville, Tampa, and some of the other teams that in your division this year. So hopefully for the Hawks, they can build up on some momentum here. You got a couple of games down there in Nashville this upcoming week. We'll see what happens. But you have to be so sort of encouraged watching this weekend's action against Detroit. Let's temper the expectations. I'm not saying they're a playoff team yet, but it's a team that you had to be that's less talented than you, even though you go through your transition yourself.
Yeah, I mean, look, it would look pretty stupid if they lost both those games. So the fact that they won both of them, I think that helps their. You got to think that helps their confidence a little bit too. For like you said, I mean, they looked really good, like you said. I mean, but Detroit is supposed to stink for the next couple of years. So I'm not. Look, it's too bad they can't play Detroit all the time, but
right.
we can't, but we can't do that. But it is what it is. So look, you gotta give the Hawks props. They got some winnable games against Nashville too. I mean, Nashville's sort of like right where they are. So we'll see. If they can really split the games, I'll feel a little bit better.
Yeah, just like the Bulls, for the Blackhawks, you have to be competitive against teams that are equal or better than you. It's easy to be above the bad teams, but let's see if you can bring against better teams.
Real quick though, as a whole, I've watched some of those Canadians games. They looked really good. So does Toronto. Both of them are leading the league in points right now. And if you're the NHL, you're hoping that we can get at least one Canadian team in the Stanley Cup. Because can we get a Canadian team to in the Stanley Cup final, please? But look, I mean, Montreal looks really good right now, and so does Toronto. So also Vegas has looked really good too. So also of course the defending champion Tampa Bay. Yeah, I can't forget about them. Connor McDavid, doing his name, leading the league in points with Mitchell Marner from Toronto, and Ozzy Kopitar. That's a name we haven't heard in a little bit. Sid, doing yeah, right.
Taking it back to 2012.
I know, right? Leading the league in points, so that's pretty good. So so far as a whole, what do who's impressed you so far as a whole in the NHL?
Watch out for the Minnesota Wild. I don't have their stats in front of me, but they've been very impressive. They have a couple of amazing rookies on their squad as well, so watch out for them. Maybe could this be the year that they break through and get back to the playoffs? We shall see. But like you mentioned, those Canadian teams are the talk of the league right now. But even though it's early in the season, we're a couple of weeks, almost 3 weeks in, those Canadian teams are really been impressive.
And you gotta think too the fact that they're actually able to play in their home provinces. So
yeah.
I think that's helped their confidence a little bit, so they didn't have to pull like a Toronto with the Raptors, especially with the Maple Leafs not having to play in Tampa like the NBA counterparts have to do. So so you got to feel pretty good.
That's been key. Yeah,
that's been key too. We're also in Montreal too. I know they've been having some various issues with COVID too over in Montreal, but look, I think Washington's looked really good so far. So yeah, I think right now you got to be feeling pretty good. So far, so good if you're the NHL.
Yeah, I know. Speaking of the Capitals, real quick, a couple of players got busted for not wearing masks the other day. So you had to take this thing seriously, folks.
Oh, come on now. Some of you guys know better. Ovechkin, come on. You know better. Come on now.
And also, too, the Dallas Stars, they played their first game this past Friday, so they finally got off the ground and and so hopefully they won't have too many issues going forward. They're the last team to play because even though they couldn't start off the season like everybody else because they've been dealing with COVID issues. 17 players to be exact.
Yeah, you hope for the best for them, and hopefully they can.
Yeah.
Hopefully there won't be any more issues with the stars. I know I saw that too. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. The fact that they're just now starting, but unfortunately, it's been like that for a lot of these teams all over the place with everything going on, especially with the restrictions. So, restrictions in some areas, but other areas are a little more free flowing. So, but that's again, we won't go there. We talked about it, so we won't go there. But on that note, you can follow me at you know what are you looking forward to this week, Sid? I'm sorry.
I can actually watch some out of market action with the NBA and the NHL, and hopefully I can catch up on some college basketball. Who's going to play with these top 25 teams? Hopefully they don't get affected by COVID.
Oh yeah, same here. I'm looking like we mentioned some of the games. Yeah, we got coming up tonight. Like it's what?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I thought we had some technical issues, but no, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. That kind of okay. So caught me off guard, but yeah. Look, hopefully, like you said, hopefully we won't see any more COVID issues. Hopefully, on the NBA side, we'll maybe we'll see how the Bulls look against the Celtics. We'll see the sort of litmus test for them. Not like a litmus test, but sort of say like, okay, are we at the Celtics level yet, or can we at least play with the Celtics? That would be a win either way. And also, too, the college hoops we talked about, also the NHL we talked about a little bit, too. So looking forward to seeing some of the out-of-market stuff this weekend, especially with not having to worry about football for the next couple of weeks. So we'll catch up with us.
Yes, it should be fun.
On that note, you follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. You can go to our website, weareregalradio.com. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com. You can also catch this podcast, Second City Sports, along with that other podcast programming from War Media by simply going to War on Anchor, which keeps you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and the iHeartRadio app. Wherever you download your podcast, make sure you type in the search engine box War on Anchor. That's WARR on Anchor. And we're also on YouTube at War Media, once again, at WARR Media. You can not only listen to us, but watch us do our thing live. As Lakeena mentioned before, catch our past shows, and not only from us, but from our other guys as well. So like, comment, share, subscribe, and thank you for supporting us. Mwah!
Thank you very much. It's also, please be careful out there because it's going to be a mini big snowstorm coming in through our area. So if you're living in the Chicagoland
area,
if you're living in the Chicagoland and the Midwest areas, please be careful out there. Try not to go too fast. Look, we've been very fortunate this winter, so it's coming for us. So we figured this was coming. But also, too, guys, enjoy the sports. Make sure you keep your mask up, wash your hands, and keep your distance. I know the diners and the restaurants are open, but let's not go too crazy, folks. Okay, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, folks. So let's slow down and let's sort of ease our way back into stuff.
Yes, for Lakeena, I am Sid. We'll catch you on our next episode of Second City Sports Weekend Edition. Until then, till next time, holla!
See you guys Friday. Be careful out there.